Hey everyone, my name is Brandon Zehoff, and I wanted to be able to make this video to really help organizational leaders work through their decision-making process for artificial intelligence or integrating artificial intelligence into their organization. And when I say artificial intelligence, I'm speaking more specifically to generative AI, tools like ChatGPT or Claude, large language models. And so I've been talking with a lot of leaders, and there's themes that come up, there's questions that come up, and so I wanted to just provide this as a framework to help you think through. Do I need help with this? Do I need an AI consultant? Do I need a generative AI specialist? And if so, like what are the questions I should be asking? What should I know? What should I not know? Like how should I work through it? What should I be thinking about? And so I probably have about maybe 3 to 4 thousand hours logged on just a wide variety of generative AI tools. And so over time, you develop an intuition for what to use, how to use, and also being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, right? Just knowing that this stuff is really impacting the workforce. These tools are very powerful and can create huge gains within an organization. So I wanted to make this as beneficial as possible. Again, this will be, in my newsletter for you to be able to review. And so we'll jump in terms of where you should start. And so the real beginning, the real first point of emphasis is asking yourself are people in my organization using generative AI tools? Have we put out any kind of mandate, or have we driven any information around how members within our organization should be using some of these tools? Because believe it or not, there's a lot of anxiety for people around using the tools, particularly within their organization, if they should be using it, if they shouldn't. So you want to approach this as much as these are very technically driven projects. You should be thinking about this as really a change management or a digital transformation project. And so understanding how folks within your organization are using it is really going to drive a lot of different things. It's going to drive costs. You want to make sure that you don't have siloed departments around productivity. It's going to really drive which platforms you should be using. And so we have really a framework that we've developed. I talked about this in another video around just the stages of the AI learning journey, starting with just awareness, adoption, application, literacy, and then innovation, right? So you want to really understand where your people are at, maybe doing some internal surveying. We help with this kind of stuff and being able to engage folks where they can feel comfortable just talking about how they're using it, what they wish it can do, what it isn't doing. And so you really want to start there with understanding the culture that exists within your organization around technological tools like generative AI. And so the next piece of this is picking the platform. So once you really understand, you can start to think about, well, what platform should we be on? And it's really the big four, right? There's the big four. And I'll kind of go through these, right? People are really familiar with ChatGPT, and ChatGPT just added a couple new features, but most people understand ChatGPT, and but most people don't get that ChatGPT is just the front end facing the consumer product, right? The chatbot that exists that overlays on top of the entire tech stack that is ChatGPT, and so you can use OpenAI's Playground, where you can create, custom assistants. You can create, you would use the API here to be able to create custom assistants, and then you can pick the different models. You get access to all the models. You would be able to change the temperature, and that just means, being able to influence the outputs. You can have more control over the system prompt. You can have more control over the user prompt, right? And so this is just you can create access controls. And so this is just a more comprehensive way of using this. And so many people don't know about that. And there would be some training around how to use that. And then, of course, there's Claude, which is very, very popular. And then, of course, they also have kind of a back end with Claude Console. And this is where you would, if you wanted more customization, if you wanted to be able to use the API that might be more cost effective. I'll get to that in a moment. And then, of course, there's Llama with Meta, and they're open source, which means that you can build and fine tune, right, your own large language models. You can build them locally. Requires a little more technical help, and most organizations would need more assistance around implementation with something like this, but it is possible depending on what your organization's needs are. And of course, there's Gemini, which is Google's large language model. And Gemini is really good because it incorporates itself into some of the Google Suite products, similar to Copilot, which I'm kind of lumping into the ChatGPT OpenAI world. But Gemini can integrate into Google products, just as Copilot kind of integrates directly into Microsoft products. And so you want to be able to evaluate which one of these platforms is going to be right for you. And so depending on how people are using it is going to drive you directionally in terms of which one you should be using. And so you'll think about just departmental usages, right? Like finance having access to one set of instructions, marketing having one, accounting, right? Depending on how big your organization is, you may want to consider those, right? And so from that, we'll get into some of the more technical things. You'll develop, custom GPTs. What are your custom GPT needs? And so what are custom GPTs? And so you can look at custom GPTs as really, I talked about that system prompt and that user prompt, and then the data that gives context to the large language model. And so that's really the composition of being able to get the best output is what is the data that you'd like the large language model to reference in its output, and then what is the system prompt that's going to be able to guide it, and then what is the user specific prompt that goes in there to be able to really drive a positive output. And so that's the world of GPTs and prompt engineering. And so you can do that in the chat GPT interface and also in like the playgrounds or the backend interfaces in the same kind of way, just which one you may need more control over or not. And so you can build customized assistants, like I mentioned. This can be department specific, right? This can be organizational specific, and so really you think about how do I look at task automation, or how do I just streamline my entire operations in terms of using large language models, and our members on my team using the same data? Are the GPTs or the instructions of the large language model similar across departments so we can have some consistencies in how we're using it? And so we want to be able to evaluate how we do that. And you can look at that. Some organizations need, a wide variety of custom GPTs, or maybe they even need a custom solution built. And so when you start thinking about custom solutions, you're getting into, using the API and setting up your own API environment, your API keys, versus getting licensing. And a lot of enterprise accounts have license minimums. I think OpenAI, you may be looking at a minimum of 100 licenses at $25 to $30 per month. Or you could go with the Teams account, which where you get 2 licenses. And I think Anthropic is 5 at the minimum. But there is going to be a cost benefit analysis that exists there. And that's why it's important to know how members in your organization are using these tools, because you could use the API and it could be much more cost effective than getting 50 licenses for your organization, right? Everyone could just be drawing on the API. And the API, really, you're just charged for usage, right? Every time you call on the API, you're then charged. And these are called tokens, is which how they charge it. And so you can look at tokens as like characters or words. So how many words are you using in your prompts? And so not to get too bogged down into the technical, but that's really what would drive the cost, is at what volume are we using it, how many people are using it, and then maybe you can even bifurcate it, trifurcate it across different departments and say, well, is finance using it more, is marketing using it more, is accounting using it more, right? And so you can get into those kind of use cases around cost to see if you want to use licensing versus the API. And so from that, there will be an integration that happens in setting up the playground or setting up your console, and then having permissions set up. And most people will need just training on how to use large language models collaboratively. I think many people are kind of using their own chat GPT, right? And so when you start thinking about how can we use this as a collective knowledge base, how can we start to maybe integrate our projects across department to be able to synthesize this information and data to be able to drive new insights. There's going to be some training around that. So you want to make sure that that is included, whether it's through a Loom video or if it's a couple day training processes, or documentation, whatever form that is, your team is probably going to need some training around prompt development, the difference between system prompts and user prompts, um, tokenization, right? Just these real obscure large language model concepts. As they get introduced to team members, you'll need some training around that. Not to mention just setting up API keys and putting this in your organization. If you have an IT department, they may be familiar with this, and you might be just running this through IT. But in general, you need training. And talking with companies, there's a lot of training around this part of it. So again, the technical documentation, providing guides and training materials, and transitioning to a more advanced use case, because most people are familiar with just the ChatGPT interface, and getting into even this, right? This tool I'm using here is also a generative AI tool in Vercel. But some of the learnings would be able to translate into other tools. But that's probably just a more advanced thing. But just keep that in mind, that there is going to be an element of training and unfamiliarity that exists in some of these tools, that you may have to kind of walk your team through. And of course, that would lead to just weighing if you need ongoing support and kind of continuous learning in developing custom GPTs, or in being able to create more advanced prompts, having consistent prompts across your organization. This is the prompt engineering piece, where everyone's kind of using a prompt to yield a certain kind of information, or if you want to be consistent across design and things of this sort. And so I think that I hope that's helpful, right? Again, my organization is responsible use of digital intelligence, and so we really do understand that there is some organizational cultural sensitivity around adoption of these tools. And like I said, if you believe it or not, people do have a lot of anxiety around if they should or shouldn't be using these tools, or how they're using it, what information can go in these tools. Different platforms have different focus points, and so just understanding the adoption sensitivity that exists within your organization, and putting a focus on augmenting skills and collaboration versus automation and job replacement, right? And being able to just be more productive and synthesize more data, and being able to just have more efficient and data driven decision making is really, really good. And so I am a resource. I am totally open. I am very, very passionate about this generative AI stuff. Has really had an impact on my life. I've seen it have an impact on others' organizations. And so if you want to connect on LinkedIn, that is primarily where I do a lot of the business versions of generative AI and the use cases, and understanding how it can be applied to your business. Also have TikTok channel that's growing really, really fast, but it's more, the intersection between tech and culture. But certainly, if I'm happy to do, discovery, and even, work in tandem or in partnership, and showing you how, generative AI can be, you can just run faster with some of these tools. So again, my name is Brandon Zhoff, and if you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. Again, I'll share this within the LinkedIn newsletter, and hopefully the transcript works with ChatGPT. It's recording right now, and maybe it does work. But anyway, that's all for now, and thank you very much. You guys have a wonderful, wonderful day.